Section number 56 of A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4, by Henry Charles LEA. Book 8, Chapter 12, Part 2, Spheres of Action, Freemasonry. Freemasonry was growing and extending itself throughout influential circles. In 1760, Gran Logia Espanola was organized and independence of London was established. In 1780, this was changed to a Grand Orient, Symbolical Masonry being subordinated to the Scottish Rite. In this we are told that such men as Aranda, Campomanes, Rodriguez, Nava del Rio, Salazar de Valle, Jovellanos, the Duke of Alva, the Marquis de Valladolid, the Count of Monjito, and others were active, that the ministers of Carlos III were mostly Masons, and that to them was attributable the energetic action against Jesuitism and ultramontanism. To what extent this is true, it would be impossible to speak positively, but unquestionably Masonry afforded a refuge for the modern spirit in which to develop itself against the oppressive obscurantism of the Inquisition. A disturbing element was furnished by Cagliostro, who, when his 2 visits to Spain, founded the Lodge Hispana in competition with the Grand Orient. This attracted more adventurous spirits and grew to be revolutionary in character. It was the center of the foolish Republican conspiracy of 1796, known as the Conspiracy of San Blas, from the day selected for the outbreak. Arms were collected in the lodge, but the plot was betrayed to the police. 3 of the leaders were condemned to death, but, at the intercession of the French ambassador, the sentence was commuted to imprisonment for life. The chiefs were deported to Langueira, where they captured the sympathies of the guards and were enabled to escape. In 1797 they organized a fresh conspiracy in Caracas, but it was discovered and 6 of those implicated were executed. In the troubled times that followed, the revolutionary section of Masonry naturally developed at the expense of the conservative. There is probably truth in the assertion that the French occupation was assisted by the organization of the independent lodges under Miguel de Azana, one of the ministers of Carlos IV, who was the Grand Master. The ensuing war was favorable to the growth of the order. The French armies sought to establish lodges in order to popularize the intrusive government, while the English forces on their side did the same, and the Spanish troops were honeycombed with the trincheras, or entrenchments, as these military lodges were called. With the downfall of Napoleon and liberation of the papacy, Pius VII made haste to repeat the denunciation of Masonry. He issued, August 5, 1814, a decree against the infernal conventicles subversive of thrones and religion. He lamented that, in the disturbances of recent years, the salutary edicts of his predecessors had been forgotten and that Masonry had spread everywhere. To their spiritual penalties he added temporal punishments, sharp corporal affliction, with heavy fines and confiscation, and he offered rewards for informers. This decree was approved by Fernando VII and was embodied in an edict of the Inquisition, January 2, 1815, offering a term of grace of 15 days, during which penitence would be received, and after which the full rigor of the laws, secular and canonical, would be enforced. Apparently the result was inconsiderable, for on February 10th the term was extended until Pentecost, May the 14th, and inviolable secrecy was promised. Fernando had not waited for this, but had already prohibited Masonry under the penalties attaching to crimes of the first order against the state, and in pursuance of this, on September 14, 1814, 25 arrests had been made for the suspicion of membership. Thus, as before, there were cumulative jurisdiction over Masonry. The time had passed for competencies between the Inquisition and the royal courts. It was too closely identified with the state to indulge in quarrels, but still there was jealous susceptibility and self-assertion. As early as 1815 this showed itself in the prosecution of Diego Dillado, parish priest of St. George of Corunna, because he had reported the existence there of a lodge to the public authorities and not to the Inquisition. Several cases in 1817 show that when a culprit was tried and sentenced by the royal courts, the Inquisition insisted on superadding a prosecution and punishment of their own. Thus, when Jean Rost, a Frenchman, was sent to the presidio of Ceuta by the Chancellery of Granada, the Seville tribunal also tried him and ordered his confinement in the prison of the presidio, at the same time demanding from the Chancery the Masonic title and the insignia of the prisoner and whatever else appertained to the jurisdiction of the Inquisition. The Madrid tribunal, May 8, 1817, sentenced Albert Leclerc, a Frenchman, for Freemasonry. He had already been tried and convicted by the royal court, and a courteous note was addressed, as in other similar cases, to the Adelaide de Casa de Corte, to have him brought to the secret prison for the performance of spiritual exercises under a confessor commissioned to instruct him in the errors of Masonry, and to absolve him from the censures incurred, after which he would be returned to the alcalde for the execution of his sentence of banishment. So, in July 1817, the Santiago tribunal collected evidence against Manuel Llorente, sergeant of the Grenadiers, and the Suprema directed that, as soon as the secular trial was finished, he was to be imprisoned again and tried by the tribunal. For this punctiliousness there was the excuse that the papal decrees rendered Masonry an ecclesiastical crime involving excommunication, of which the temporal courts could not take no consciousness. This duplication of punishment may possibly explain the extreme variation in the severity of the penalties inflicted. In 1818, the Madrid tribunal sentenced Antonio Catala, captain of the volunteer regiment of Barbastro, to a very moderate punishment, alleging as a reason his prolonged imprisonment and ill health. The Suprema sent back the sentence for revision, when the abjuration was changed from levi to vehementi. Then the Suprema took the matter into its own hands and condemned him to be reduced to the ranks for 4 years' service in the regiment of Ceuta, which was nearly equivalent to 4 years of presidio. On the other hand, in 1819 the sentence was confirmed of Martin de Bernardo, which was merely to abjuration de levi, absolution ad cautelam, a month's reclusion and spiritual penances. Greater severity might surely have been shown in the ease of the priest. Vincent Perdiguera, commissioner of the Toledo tribunal, when, in 1817, Madrid tribunal suggested that, in view of his notorious Freemasonry and irregular conduct, he should be deprived of his office and insignia and of the fuero of the Inquisition. To this the Suprema assented, and with this he escaped. It casts doubt upon the reported extent of Freemasonry that, in spite of the vigilance of the Inquisition, the number of cases was so small. From 1780 to 1815 they amount in all only to 19. Then in 1816 there is a sudden increase to 25. In 1817 there were 14. In 1818, 9, and in 1819, 7. Possibly there may have been others tried by civil or military courts, which escaped inquisitional action, but in view of its jealous care of its jurisdiction, these cannot have been numerous. Yet all authorities of the period agree that under the Restoration Masonry flourished and spread, especially in the army, that it was the efficient source of the many plots which disturbed Fernando's equanimity, and that the Revolution of 1820 was its work, backed by the widespread popular discontent aroused by the oppression and inefficiency of his rule. When in January 1820 the movement was started by the troops destined for America in their cantonments near Cedaz, there was a lodge in every regiment. Rigo, who led the revolt, was a Mason, and so was the Count of Bilbao, who ensured its success when, at Ocana, whither he had been sent to command the troops gathered for its suppression, he caused them to proclaim the Constitution. At Santiago the first act of the revolutionaries was to sack the Inquisition and to liberate the Count of Montijo, Grand Master of the Masonic organizations, who lay in the secret prison. We shall have occasion hereafter to see the ruinous part played by the Freemasonry and its offshoot the Comuneros during the brief constitutional epoch from 1820 to 1823. With the restoration of absolutionism, the Comuneros disappeared and the Masons became the object of persecution far severer than that of the Inquisition. They were subjected to the military commissions set up everywhere throughout Spain, and those who would not come forward and denounce themselves were declared, by an order of October 9, 1824, to be punishable with death and confiscation. End of section 56. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC.